Welcome back to class. In this video, we will be registering the user. Now, what are the steps that we need to take to register a user? 1. We need to get the user details, that is the name, email address, password. Then validate them. By validating them, I mean that we should ensure that all the required fields are sent and the email is valid or unique. Then the next thing is to store the user data in our database. And then the last thing is to redirect our user back to the login page. So we are going to perform these steps now. So in order to register our user, we're going to add an action attribute to our form action equals /register_user, and the method will be post method equals post. So the next thing we need to do is to add name attribute to our form fields. So as you can see, I already have name attribute, so name equals name. Then for email, name equals email, and for password we have name equals password. So if you've not done this already, you can just go ahead and do that. Add the name attributes. So for the name, you name it as name, email should be email, password is password. Also, don't forget to add this route. So we are going to create this route now. Register user. So I'll go to my web.php, copy this. Let me copy one of these. Register_user. So I want this route to call a function named register_user in our user controller. I can clear this up now since we don't need it again. So I want this to call register user. So we're going to go to our controller and create that function. So I'll go to my controller, user controller. Okay, I've created it already, but let me just do it again so you understand what I'm doing. I'll just say public function register user. So this is our function name, register user. So in order to get our user data, that means the name, email, and password, we're going to use the Laravel request class. So Laravel has created a request class for us. So we're going to use this. That's what we use to get the data. So create an instance of it. So in order to get the name, you can say name equals request name. So what this will do is we get the name from our form field and store it in our name variable. Let's echo it and see what happens. Echo $name. So if I go back to my form, let's assume I want to register a user. Let's say name is Kenny, email is this, password is this. Wow, we have an error message. Now let's see how to correct this error message. The error message says the post method is not supported for this route. Supported method is get. So what this is actually saying is, let's go back to our form. So we actually wrote here that our method will be post, but when we go to our web.php, our web.php has get. So we're going to change this to post. So that's why you're having that error message. So save, then go back. Let me go back, refresh. Kenny. Let me use this email. As you can see, Kenny is echoed. So if it's echoed or display. So if I need to display the user's name, what I would do, okay, I'm displaying the user's name already, the email. So I'm echoing email. As you can see, the email is displayed on our browser. So what we are going to do now is to perform these steps. So as you can see, we are getting everything already. So in order for me to register user, the first thing I need to do again is to get the user details and validate them. Then how do I do this? Just follow me. So I'll go back to my code. So we're going to create a variable called validator equals validator make. Just follow me. I'm going to explain everything that's happening here. Just watch what I'm doing. I will explain when I'm done. It's a name, required, email, required, then password, required. Mean sys. Okay, let me explain everything that's happening here. Now this validator is a variable I just created. Now we are calling the Laravel validator class to actually validate our request data. So because we are calling the Laravel validator class, we actually need to import it here. So if you have not done this before, you can quickly just type this, use validator. This means we are importing our validator class. So at this point, we are now using the validator class to actually validate our request data. So what I have here is get the user's details, name, email, password, validate them. So this is what this code is actually doing. This request all is the user's details. So everything is stored here. So what I'm doing, I'm now using this validator class to validate our request data, which is the name, email, and password. This name, you can see here, name, email, password. So this actually validates our data. Now let's add, okay, we need to end this statement, the semicolon. Okay, we are good now. So let's do something. Let's add a password confirmation input field. Say password, confirm password. Password underscore confirmation. So if I go back to my form, now I have to validate this. Now what I need to do here is to make sure that what the user enters as password as and password confirmation, they are the same. So how do I do that? It's very simple. I just go to my controller, then just add this confirmed. So this confirmed means your password must match password confirmation. By adding confirmed here, it means if I have password and password confirmation, both must match. Now there is something here that I need to show you. Now this password confirmation, the name must be password confirmation, password underscore confirmation. That way Laravel is able to recognize that you should check this password and password confirmation and make sure that both are the same thing. So this must be named password confirmation. Because you've named this password confirmation, Laravel is checking that. That's why this confirmed can work for it. So now this does the validation. Now the next thing we need to do is to check if our validation fails. If our validation fails, so I'll just say if $validator dots, I usually call it dots, fails. If validator fails, now what are we going to do if it fails? Now we are going to return the error message back to the user. Now in order to do this, we just say return back with errors. Validator can else. Now what this code is simply saying is if this fails, you should what return return the error message back. This return back, it means return back to our form. So it will return back to our registration form, and the error message will be passed to the form. Just follow me if you don't understand it fully yet. You understand what I'm doing very soon. But let me explain again. So I'm saying if validator fails, so if anything fails, either name, email or password fails, you should go back to our form and return the error message to us. Otherwise, you should get our data and save it to our database. So how do we do that? We just say we can create a data variable equals, I can just get my data here again, name, request, name. Let me just copy this, copy, paste. So then this will be email, and this will be password. So request password. So if it fails, it will return back to our registration from the validator the error messages. Otherwise, it should get our data and put it in data variable. Now, one thing we should note that it is very bad to store our password the way the user submitted it. So we actually need to hash our password. We need to hash it so it's not stored as a plain text in our database. So in order to do that in Laravel, I'll just say bcrypt. This bcrypt will hash the password so it's not stored as a plain text. As simple as this. Adding this makes the password not to be stored as a plain text. So after doing this, the next thing I will do is to store my data, store the user's data in our database. So I'll just say user, just this line of code, user create. So this line of code store our data in our database. Store data in our database. So as you can see now, this user is a class, so we need to import it above. So this is actually our model. So in order to store data into our database, we call our model. So the model is called user. We're going to import the model above so we can use it here. So what I'm going to do, I will say use app slash user. So this is our user model. If we go to our app folder, app user, you can see the model. So we actually use the model to store data into our database. So I'll go back to my code. So we are calling this model and this create function. So it actually store our data into our database. So this gets the data and store it in request variable. Let's put a comment here. Get the user's data and store in $data variable. Then it actually stores the data in our database. Now what we need to do next is we need to do something. If we need to check if the data is actually stored in our database. So this will check that by typing if user. It means if our data is stored in our database. Of course, if it's stored, this will be true. So if user, I will now do what's the next thing? Let's go back to our slide so we understand. So we get the user details, validate and validate the details. So we can go back to our code. So this is actually doing that. Okay, let's add something here. Email. So this actually means name must be sent. Name is required, email is required, and it should be an email that is sent by the user. So something like kenny@gmail.com. Then password is required. It means you must send a password. Now this confirm means the password confirmation must be equal to the password that the user entered. Trying to explain everything that is happening here now, in case you did not understand initially. So name is required, so the name must be entered, which is this name. Let's go back to our form. So this is the name. So we are saying this name is required, so it must be entered by the user. The email must be entered by the user, and it must be a valid email, which is this. That's why we have email here. Then also the password must be entered by the user, and the password must be the same thing with the confirm password. So what the user enter there must be the same thing with what the user will enter here. So that's what this is actually doing. So we are not saying if validator fails, if there is an error in validation, return back, which means this back means the register form, because we are coming from the registration form. So instead of you to go to the next page, maybe login page, go back to the registration page, which is this. Then when you're going back, carry the error messages alongside, like name is required, email is required. So those can be the error messages. But if there is no error message, that means if validation passes, get the data, that's the name, email, and password, and put it in data variable. And the next thing is to call our user model, which we've done above. Then store the data in our database. Now this says if user, it means if it's actually stored. Let's just echo something for now. Echo user successfully created as echo error creating user, please try again. Now we're going to do something. So let's go back to our form. We need to do something. Let's go back to our registration form. We're going to go back to our registration form, which is this register.blade.php. Then the next thing we're going to do is we should be able to display the error messages to the user if validation fails. Now how do we do that? It's very simple. We're going to do this as if error any so if errors any, sorry, this should be errors. If errors any, then I will say div or close my div, sorry, so div. Then what I'm going to do, I'll give this div a class. I'll give it a class of alerts, class equals alert alert danger. You're going to understand what I'm doing very soon. Then I'll create a UL tag, then li tag, then I'll do a for each. Just follow me. I will explain everything that's happening here. So what this is saying is, if there is any error here in this our validator, it should display it here. So I'm just using a bootstrap class, alert danger. So this class of the div will be alert danger. So it looks like red or is red. Then check if there is any error, any validation error. If there is, display it. So that's what this line of code is doing. Check if there is any validation error. If there is, display it to the user. So let's run our code. Let's refresh our browser, then submit. Okay, there's front end validation here. I think I have required in everything. So required. So you know what I'm going to do? Let's remove the front end validation. We're going to put it back later. Okay, and see. So it's always good to have both front end and back end validation. Wow, can you see this? The name field is required, the email field is required, the password field is required. So our validation is actually working. So let's assume I enter name, maybe Kenny. It has removed the error message for name. Not saying email field is required, password field is required. Now let's assume I do this Kenny, email address, I enter Kenny, then password. Okay, there is still front-end validation here, so let's enter this correctly. The password confirmation does not match. Do you understand why this error message? We have this error message. So what I typed in my password box is different from what I typed in the confirm password box. That's why we are having this error message. And you are able to see this error message because we have this in our validator. Let's go back to this confirmed. So if you put confirmed there, you need to make sure that this is named password confirmation. So when you do that, Laravel checks if what you have here and in this password box and your password confirmation, if they are the same. If they are not, it returns this error message. Now let's return our front end validation. So it's always good to have both front end and back end validation. So it means our front end validation will work now. Okay, let's refresh this page. So the reason why you must have both front-end and back-end validation is the front-end validation can be bypassed. Smart people can bypass this front-end validation. So we have back-end. So in case they bypass this, the back-end validation will catch them. So let's actually submit this form. Let's say name is Kenny, email is Kenny at gmail.com, then the password is this. Okay. Wow. User successfully created. Now let's check our DB to see if the user was actually created. Wow, as you can see, we successfully registered our user. Now what we are going to do is, instead of just displaying a message user successfully created, we are going to redirect the user back to our login form and display a message user successfully created. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do, I'll say return redirect slash login wait. I'm going to explain everything very soon, just follow me. Sources, user successfully created. User successfully created. Then let me copy this. So this will be slash with error error creating user, please try again. Now when it's successful, it loads our login view and puts our this test user successfully created in session variable called sources. So this is a variable called sources, a session variable. So if we put this test here in this sources variable, so in our view we can actually display that to the user. The same thing for the error message. It pulls this error in a session variable. So that is in a session variable called error, we have error creating user, please try again. That's if anything goes wrong. So let's go to our view, our login view, to actually display this message in case it is successful. So I'll come back to this place, resource, views, login. Okay, now as you can see, I've done this already here. So let me explain what's happening here. In case you've not done this, you don't have this portion of code, please, you need to add it. So this adds if session sources. So it means if anything is stored in session variable sources, display it. So this actually displays it. So I'm using it, displaying it in a div. So I give my div class alert sources. So you see how it will look like when I run the code. So it's actually display this message for us when it's successful. And also this error message, in case there's any error message at if section error, in case there's any error stored in our section variable error, display it in a div. Our div has a class of alert danger. So this alert danger is red. The color is red, while alert success, the color is green. So we're actually displaying the success and error. In case there's any error or is went successfully, it will actually be displayed here. So we're going to test this now. So let's register a user. Let's say Simon Peter Simon at gmail.com. Okay, as you can see, we have this error message. Password confirmation does not match. Password must be at least 6 characters. So we're having that error message because we say minimum 6. So the minimum length of the password must be 6. So let's fix that and submit our form. Let's say Samuel Peter at name sam at gmail.com. Okay, so as you can see, our user is successfully, we have this success message, account successfully created, please log in, and we have this beautiful display message. So, and if we go back to our database, so we have it here. So we've been able to register the user successfully. So I would love to encourage you to please subscribe to my channel if you have not done that yet. Also, please like this video so a lot of people will get to see it, and click on the bell icon so whenever I post new videos, you'll be among the first persons that we know. So in the next video, we're going to log in the user.